So today's story is about Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. And we're going to start the story off when he was a child. And he grew up in an area called Mesopotamia. And if you look on a globe, this is to the east of where Mecca and Medina are. It's quite far in those days. So not in the Arabian Peninsula. This is to the east of the Arabian Peninsula, in a place called Mesopotamia. There are two rivers that run through this area. Do you remember what they are?
The Tigris and the Euphrates.
The Tigris and the Euphrates rivers. Good. Okay, so when Ibrahim alayhi salam was a young child, he grew up with people who were idol worshippers, and they would even make these idols on their own. They would carve them out of wood, or they would fashion them in some other way, but they're the ones that made them. And I can't say for certain, but I believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected all of his prophets and messengers so that none of them ever had to stray from belief in one creator. So even though Prophet Ibrahim was a child, Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam was a child, I would say less than 12 years old, but I can't say for certain, but when he was still a boy, but more than 5 or 6 or 7. So some time when he was like
9.
He could have been 9, but I can't say for sure. But when he was a child, he naturally had a repulsion against worshiping idols. He naturally felt like it wasn't right. But he wasn't quite sure what was worthy of worship. But he knew that it couldn't have been the idols, because the idols were made by his tribes people and his family and his the people of the town. Allah had also blessed Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam with intelligence. And one day he asked his father, Azar, "Why do you worship the idols? And why do you take them for gods? Because the idols can't hear you, and they can't see you." This is Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. "And I know that you are wrong for worshipping the idols. The people have made those idols on their own. They may have been fashioned out of stone, and they could have been carved, or they were carved out of wood. And in some cases, much later on, many years later, many hundreds of years later, idols were even made out of dates." I'll take you down another story really quickly and tell you about a Sahabi, the time of the Prophet ﷺ, who had an idol made out of dates. And one day he got hungry. And do you know what he did?
Eat the idol.
He ate the idol. And as he was eating it, he was thinking to himself, this is absurd. Like, how could I have been worshipping this? He became Muslim. Now, I can't say for certain at the time of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam if any of the idols at that time were made out of dates or any other foods, but they were likely made out of stone and wood and maybe other materials. Now, Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam knew that the idols couldn't have been worthy of worship. They may have been made out of sand, but that would have been a little bit tricky in order to have an idol made out of sand, but it is possible. Now, Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he was a child, before he became a prophet, he knew what his people were doing was wrong. And I'll tell you what his dad said. But first he knew it was wrong. He knew it was wrong, and he wanted to help his people see that what they were doing was wrong. But his father also believed in the idols. Now, Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam knew that the idols were not worthy to be worshipped. He knew that they were not gods. He knew that they were not the one and only God. But he wanted to find out who the one and only God was. So one evening, as the darkness gathered around, and back in those days, when it got dark at night, it got very dark at night. Sometimes when we go outside, we don't see a lot in the sky. It looks kind of a dark bluish color, and it may be occasionally dotted with a couple of stars, and you may see the moon. But in those days, the sky was very, very dark. And that's just because there wasn't a lot of extra light the way we have today. We have street lights, and we have light pouring out of people's houses, and we have light coming from buildings and cars and other things. So we have so much light that we can't even see what's in the night sky. But back then, or if you go out to the desert, or someplace that's not very populated, you'll see the sky come alive with stars. And there'll be so many stars that the entire sky is just white with stars. So many stars, clusters of stars, and just it's magnificent. And there was this especially bright shining star in the night sky. And Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam said, this is far more worthy of worship than the idols. Now, in his heart, he may have not really thought that that was God, but he certainly thought that that was more worthy of worship than an idol that was made by human hands. But when the stars set, as we know, stars rise and set at night, he knew that that couldn't be God, that couldn't be worthy of worship, because the star came and then left. But he saw the beautiful, bright, shining moon. And the moon is the second brightest thing in our night sky. The sun is the brightest, and then the moon. So when he saw the moon, he thought, well, this is more worthy of worship. Definitely more worthy of worship than those idols that were made by man. This moon is magnificent. But certainly in his heart, he knew that at least the moon is more worthy of worship, but he knew that there was more. That he knew that there must be one creator that created those stars and that moon. But certainly, compared to the idols, the moon was far more worthy of worship. But alas, the moon rose and set. And then he thought, well, no, the moon couldn't be worthy of worship. It's set. It's gone. But dawn came, and the sun rose. And the sun was the most magnificent thing in the sky. Not only does it shine brightly, but it also nourishes the land in a way that if we did not have sunlight, we may not have any life on this planet. So certainly the sun is far more worthy of worship than anything else in the sky, and definitely more than the idols that were made by man. But alas, the day came to an end, and also the sun disappeared. And Ibrahim alayhi salam, as a child, knew that he would no longer think that anything is worthy of worship except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who created everything. In this way, Ibrahim alayhi salam, as a child, came to the conclusion that every single person on this planet is capable of doing, recognizing that there has to be something greater than everything we see that created everything that we see and everything that we can't see. He went through that process, and so can you. And he was especially intelligent, so he went through it as a child. And maybe some children do that today, and maybe you think about it also. But it means that everybody is capable of doing that. That Allah has given that curiosity in everyone to think, well, what did create the sun? What did create the moon? Who created us and this planet? There has to be something that created us. And so Ibrahim alayhi salam went to the marketplace, went to where all the people were of his town, his family, his friends, the tribes people, the townspeople, and he called to all the people. He said, "Whom do you worship?" He knew that they worshipped the idols. He knew that the idols were made by man, carved out of stone or wood into various shapes, which then were placed in temples or houses of worship. They may be adorned. Sacrifices may be offered to them. They may be perfumed and decorated. And some people maybe brought food for those idols and left offerings. They made prayers to those special idols. They built beautiful places to store those idols. And Ibrahim alayhi salam said, "Do the idols even listen to you when you talk to them? Do they respond to you? Do they answer your prayers? Can they do anything for you? Can they do you harm or good? Allah gives me food and drink. Allah cures me if I am ill. And most importantly, Allah also makes the sun rise and set, and the moon rise and set, and He created everything." The people answered, "Well, our fathers and our forefathers and our ancestors and all the people in this town and everyone we know, they worship the idols. So we worship the idols. It's what we do. It's our tradition." And Ibrahim alayhi salam spoke up confidently and strong and said, "You, your fathers, are wrong. The idols are not God." He was basically saying to them that everything that you're doing, just because your forefathers are doing, or they did do it, is wrong. You are wrong, and they are wrong. The idols are not God, and they are not worthy of worship. And even the king himself of the land thought that he was a god. And this is not unusual. A lot of kings of the past thought that they were either gods or were appointed by God to rule as a god on this land. His name was Nimrud. And one day, Ibrahim alayhi salam told the king, "My Lord is the one God who can give life and death. No one else can give life and death." And the king said, "I can give life and death." He was an evil king. And he could choose for any of his subjects whether they live or die. And Ibrahim alayhi salam said, "My God is the one who lets the sun rise out of the east. Can you make the sun rise out of the west?" The king and all the people became silent and angry. They knew that no one could tell the sun what to do, and no one could make the sun rise out of the west and set in the east. Ibrahim alayhi salam did not fear them. He was not afraid of them. He said, "Down with all of you, and down with all the things that you worship. Don't you think? Have you no good sense?" Over time, Ibrahim alayhi salam grew strong in his faith and in his conviction. He knew that there was only one creator. He knew that there was only one Allah, only one God worthy of worship. One day, when the people had gone out to a big festival, all the people of the town had left. And Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, as a child, was left. He didn't go to the festival. The festival was to celebrate the idols, and he stayed behind. He stayed behind and took a hammer, and he went into one of the houses of worship where all the idols were kept, all magnificently displayed with their adornments and their offerings and their special places within this house of worship, this special temple. It was magnificently built and decorated, and all these stunning idols were in this place. And this is where people came and they offered their offerings and their prayers to these idols. And Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, with confidence, took the hammer and he broke every single one of those idols in that place. All except for one, the largest idol of them all. And around the neck of the largest idol, he placed the hammer. When the people returned from their festival and their celebrations, they shouted in absolute shock, "Who has done this? What has happened? Who has destroyed all of our gods?" And someone said, that boy Ibrahim, he had been speaking badly about our idols. Where is he now? We didn't see him at the festival. He wasn't at the fair. He wasn't at the celebrations. Where is he now? Someone go find him. They thought for sure he had caused this mischief. The angry crowd marched to Azar's house and found Ibrahim alayhi salam. And they all shouted at Ibrahim alayhi salam, "Are you the one who did this to our gods? Did you destroy them?" And he said, "Well, ask the biggest one. He's the one with the hammer around his neck. See if he can tell you who broke them." They just stood there. And one of them shouted, "You know that those idols, those gods cannot speak and cannot hear and cannot do anything." And Ibrahim alayhi salam said, "But you insist on worshipping them." He was desperately trying to get them to understand how absurd their practices were. Will you worship those idols instead of worshiping Allah? Will you worship those idols which cannot give you any harm or good? Ibrahim told them those idols could not be God. Now Nimrud, the evil king, and his priests became angry. And they feared that the people might begin to listen to Ibrahim alayhi salam, because after all, he made sense. Those idols couldn't do any harm or good. They couldn't answer those prayers. And if people started believing in the one true God, in Allah, they may not believe in the king and his power. So everyone became quiet. And Nimrud was angry and contemplating what to do. And he feared what could happen. And one of the priests said, "What will you do with him, who has destroyed all of our idols?" And the crowd shouted, "Burn him and support the gods." The angry crowd brought lots of sticks and wood and fuel, and they built a huge fire. It was enormous. It was so large that birds that flew above the fire were instantly scorched and died and fell from the sky blackened. They took Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, they tied a rope around him, and they put him into the fire. Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam was not afraid. He trusted in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he believed that Allah would protect him. The people added fuel to the fire and made it blazing hot. But in that moment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the fire to be cool. And the fire had to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the fire did not harm Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. It didn't even become a little bit hot. It didn't singe his hair. It didn't become uncomfortable. It certainly didn't burn him or leave scars. The fire sizzled and crackled and popped all around him. The black, smoky cloud that came off of that fire could be seen from all around. Everyone was sure that Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam would burn to death in agony. But Allah had commanded the fire to be cool and to be safe for Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. And everything that is living and non-living, that is visible and non-visible, must obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And a miracle happened, for he was not burned, and Ibrahim alayhi salam walked right out of the fire. He had been protected. He had not been harmed. Now, even though the people had seen this great miracle, only a small number of them believed in Allah. And so after a period of time, Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam and the few followers that he had finally left the land of Mesopotamia, and they traveled west to a land now called Palestine. If you want more information on the lessons that we are doing with this main lesson block, you can head over to my website at pepperandpine.com. And if you want to see some of the other videos in this main lesson block, you can tap on the screen right now. And if you are interested in seeing how our homeschool is progressing on a daily basis, you can find me on Instagram at pepperandpine.